6:30, and I call to order this meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the Planning Commission members. I will then open the floor to public comment first for persons in support of the application, and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name and address and speak into the microphone. Each speaker will have the chance to speak once and should keep their comments to less than 5 minutes. Speakers are encouraged to only address new and relevant information pertaining to an item. Above all, please be cordial to all meeting participants and refrain from side conversations and speaking out of turn, or you will be asked to leave. Lastly, decisions on rezoning applications will be scheduled for an additional public hearing during an upcoming County Board of Commissioners. Decisions on conditional use permits applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. I will now call to order the meeting. We'll do roll call. Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Jongling.
Here.
Commissioner Green.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Commissioner Poppins.
Here.
And Commissioner Hogan is here. And can I get a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes from Tuesday, February 21st? Has everybody had a chance to look it over?
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
I'll second Scott. I don't think my thing's on.
We got a second from Scott.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jongling.
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. Now if I can get a motion for the approval of the meeting agenda for this evening.
I'll move to approve the agenda, Scott.
Second, Green.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Jongling.
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is also a yes. Okay. I will now open the floor to public input on non-agenda items. At this time, I know we are doing a work session on the pipeline ordinance. We are going to open the floor for public comment to that, since it is not an agenda item. So if you have a comment on that, you may come up to the podium.
We, now, or are we doing that at the end of new business?
Pardon?
Are we gonna do it in new business, or we're doing it right now?
Right now, Toby said right now.
Yeah, since it's not an agenda item.
It's a non-agenda item, so we're going to do it right now.
But we approved the agenda as new business, and
Well, the public is to speak to.
But it's just a work session.
Yeah.
So Toby said to allow them to.
instead of waiting. So we aren't gonna do anything during new business.
We'll have a work session.
We're going to have our
Okay.
work session.
Got it.
Okay.
I don't, there'd be no public input during the work session.
Correct. There
I'm
will be
with
no
you now.
public input during that.
Yep.
Evening, thank you. Dale Bonema from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 5005 East 49th Street. Have a farm that's 3 miles north of Canton here that Summit's going through. Also have one in Iowa that they're going through. Have met about 6-8 times with Summit representatives, and they're telling me how safe this is. And then they go to the PUC and say it's so dangerous that they can't allow
the dispersion of it to be out in public because it could be used as an act of terrorism. To me, this is kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth at the same time. There's a lot of stuff that's not being told in this. If you allow this 24-inch pipeline and it breaks, it will release approximately 8 million cubic feet of CO2 into your atmosphere. How far is that going to drift? There's a Toma one that happened in Mississippi, drifted approximately 14.8 miles. So this could affect Canton, Harrisburg, Sioux Falls, every place you want to talk about because of how much and how the volume that's going to be in here. If I'm right with the 8 million, which I might be wrong because I don't know how to figure all the pressure in the pipeline and how much it'll do, but according to the Google, your big tanks on the railroad hold approximately 6,646, I think it is, cubic feet. So that would amount to 1,200 train cars exploding when this goes off. This is not something that is safe for the public. This is maybe a good thing. I'm an investor in an ethanol plant. And yes, we need to maybe take care of CO2, but to put people's lives in danger and use eminent domain for it and not have proper setbacks is wrong. And should be wrong for anybody, everybody, in businesses or an individual to do on anybody. FEMSA, I think it is called, I'm not positive, after the Mississippi break, came out and said that their regulations are not adequate to protect small communities, and they're coming out with new regulations in October of '24. This should be waiting until at least that point in time before anything is ever allowed to be done, or you need to have setbacks to protect the people that are the innocent people who don't want this through their land. And it's being, if they get eminent domain, how do you stop it, and then who's liable for it if it breaks? The lawyers are going to come back on the innocent people who didn't want it in the first place, and you're going to wind up losing everything you owned. It's 2 or 3 generations of ground. In my case, my dad bought the piece back in 1969 that they're going through. He left it to me, and I've left it to my children, 2 of my boys. So it's 3rd generation already. And my son has 2 small 4-year-olds. Are they going to farm? I don't want them farm over the top of a hazardous liquid pipeline. And the reason this is called a hazardous liquid pipeline is because it is carrying a deadly asphyxiant. If you look up on Google, it's approximately 0.04% that we are breathing right now. If it gets above 8%, you'll become disorientated, you'll have headaches, and you'll pass out. If it gets above 10%, you'll be dead in approximately 4 minutes or less. This is what is used to euthanize all of the livestock that goes through your packing plants. This is a deadly asphyxiant. Please put enough setbacks or regulations on this to keep it safe for the people that have to put up with it out in the rural community. Because it might come back to your town too if there's a break and it's drifting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Hoffman, 27673 South Dakota Highway 11. I think we've went over this in the last meeting, other than Mr. Poppins wasn't here, but we need to be clarifying on the terms. We're talking setbacks and we're talking easements. Setback is setting back from your property, your house, your barn, your hog confinement. The easement is what they're gonna allow the pipeline to go through, so you're 60, you're 70, or whatever. You were talking last meeting about landowner rights. A setback is gonna affect the other landowners. So you could have land parallel to this, or adjacent to this, that you won't get compensated for. I mean, you're gonna have the use, your neighbor could allow it to go through and get the easement money for it. But if you do a setback, and I'm in favor of doing the large setback, cause I think we know what we're trying to do. But if it goes through and you have that large setback, you're gonna affect your neighbors as well that aren't gonna be able to use their land as they intended to. You're not gonna be able to put your house within, if you're talking the 1,500 square, or 1,500 feet for the, like you did for the windmills. I mean, the windmills, we did a 1,500 foot setback because, in my opinion, it's pretty much aesthetics. This is a danger, a deadly danger. The windmill could fall on you, yes, but I don't believe that's why we set it at that length. You're gonna affect other people's property as you're doing this, and that's just something I forgot to mention last time that it kind of bugged me I didn't say it, but So your setbacks and your easements, there's different terms, make sure you're not overlapping them and using them the same.
Michelle Jensen, 27673 South Dakota Highway 11. So obviously, I am in favor of the setbacks that were set in the ordinance from the last meeting for a lot of different reasons. We heard great testimony last time about all the safety concerns. We've heard more tonight already about the safety concerns. So I think that's, point number one. But I think about this a lot as I come to these meetings, as I come to the county commission meetings. So our situation is probably, well, I shouldn't say it's unique. It's like everyone else. We heard testimony last time about property values and what some of this pipeline was doing to the property values. So then I was thinking, my husband and I bought ours as somewhat of an investment. We built hopefully our forever home, which took several properties and several years' worth of income to build this. And then we also had another investment property adjacent to it that we were hoping someone would, make a nice acreage on. Too bad, hindsight 2020, wish you had your crystal ball. Sold that right away when we had offers on it. Now here comes pipeline. Guess what? People find out there's a pipeline there. No one wants that anymore. Which also made me think about our property. I'm not talking hundreds of acres here. I'm talking about 20 acres that they want to put this pipeline through. So then I was thinking, what's that do for my property value? So our investment property, the brand new house that we just built that we've stuck a lifetime worth of savings into. Then I was thinking about property taxes. Does that go down if my property's not worth it anymore? It makes me think about all these different things, and is that really what's good for Lincoln County? Supposedly I heard somewhere that Lincoln County was one of the fastest growing counties anywhere. And now you put a pipeline through that. It seems to me when we come to these meetings, or even when I talk out in the public or talk to my clients about this, I'm just not finding a whole lot of, this pipeline is really good for South Dakota, really good for Lincoln County. So I guess I'm still looking for some protections from the ordinance you guys passed last time and some of the setbacks. I'm still looking for safety information from Summit other than because we said so. I've had multiple meetings with them as well. In my line of work, if I'm going to use a medication, I'm a veterinarian. If I'm going to use a medication, it has to be proven to be safe and efficacious. I've asked time and time again for some sort of studies. Are there test ruptures? How far do things go? Last time you talked about is 2,500 foot enough of a setback? Who would really know? So, all these things are cause for concern, I think. And I think some sort of safety precaution needs to be put in place for the people, at least the people of Lincoln County that you guys are charged to watch over. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Anthony James Ventura, 47763, 292nd Street, Hudson, South Dakota, 57034. Is anybody on the board signed up with Summit Navigator or has any contract negotiations with them at all?
I've disclosed that I have negotiations with both Navigator, and I cannot vote nor comment beyond that, but
I'd
just for
invite you to come down
clarifying.
to the audience and sit with us during these discussions, would be more appropriate.
I can listen, but commenting or taking action on would be inappropriate, given my position. Thanks,
Thank
Don.
you. I just want to bring up a couple things. I want you guys to read page 38 and 45 of the Lincoln County, South Dakota Comprehensive Plan. It talks about organized utilities, things like that. One thing you're looking at is they want an easement, and the easement goes basically, once you sign it, it's not for the 50-foot strip through the acreage or the 160 acres they want to go through. They can go through the entire property anytime they want, without your consent, without any reason, at any time, whenever. And so what it's gonna take is everybody's gonna take these 160-acre farms, and they're gonna have to parcel out that 50-foot section they want, and you're gonna have broken up land all over the county, which isn't allowed. And so that's very important in the agricultural district to protect it. And so I don't understand why we keep going through this. Second thing is during the hearing, we had a Commissioner Aaron's who sent this back, who isn't here again. And I'm really concerned about if it's so important, why you can't find out how to drive back to the commission area, which is the planning and zoning, and speak on your behalf. And third of all, nobody showed up from the other side. There was nothing illegal about this meeting. So please pass it as is. And for Commissioner Scott, I did some more studies, and I recommend that change for your setbacks for CAFOs to go to 1,250 feet now. I think that would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Early on, when I was looking for information on these carbon pipelines, of course, the Mississippi thing is well-known.
Sorry, can we get your name and
My name
address,
is Alfred
please?
Slothog. I have land in Lincoln County, and I live in Minnehaha County.
Your address, please?
48198 Kim Circle, Brandon.
Thank you.
But, yeah, the Mississippi, gassing of Sharsh or whatever it's called, you know, that's pretty well-known right now. And what the source of that leak was a mile from the town. Where I'm going here is there is no safe setback for Lincoln County and most of southeastern South Dakota. There's just not one. The next thing I found was a natural CO2 leak. It wasn't kind of an eruption out of a lake in Cameroon, Africa, but it kind of illustrates what happens and what can happen with a CO2 leak. 1,746 people died, and 3,500 head of livestock, and anything else that breathed oxygen. People that came back into the scene and found their cattle dead and their families dead said there were no flies on the carcasses. So I'm a proponent, I'm against any kind of pipeline, CO2 pipeline, anywhere in a really populated area. And as far as, there's those 4 points that these projects have to pass in order to be accepted by the PUC. And one of them is will comply with all applicable laws and rules. Now, what are they? We don't know. There aren't any as far as we know. They're in the works. And I think that's about all I have. Everything else has been covered here. Property, planning is going to be really tough, I think, if this goes through. It'll change the way cities plan because it is within reach of Canton, Worthing, T, Harrisburg, Southern Sioux Falls, and there's the other pipeline that I'm not concerned with going around the north side of Sioux Falls that could affect Sioux Falls. It's just really not worth the risk. It's not worth putting taxpayer money into a private company's pocket. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Aaron Eldridge. I work with Summit Carbon Solutions. I'm the project manager for South Dakota on the engineering side. So my expertise is more in the design, the construction, the operation, and some of the regulations that we're required to follow with that. I've also met with a few people here, and I've done some of the work with the landowner negotiations and can speak on the easement and that process as well. So just a few things that I do want to touch on is, as a company, we certainly understand the concerns with safety. There's a lot of information going out. I think it's very valid to have those concerns. Something that is new for the area is coming in. You want to make sure that that's okay, that everything looks good on there. I want to say that's certainly a concern that Summit has as well, and that we are doing everything we can to make sure that this pipeline operates as safely as possible. In many different ways. So we're regulated by the federal government for safety. DOT 195, it's under this group called PHMSA, which is under the federal DOT. They require pretty much the safe operation of 3.3 million miles of pipelines in the United States, including over 5,000 miles of CO2 pipelines that are currently in operation. Summit has committed to going above and beyond those requirements that PHMSA has. So PHMSA requires a certain depth of cover. They require 3 feet. We're going a minimum of 4 feet. When we work with the landowners, that is something that we are more than willing to negotiate with them to go deeper if required, whether that's just a request or whether that's a drain tile concern that they have. PHMSA requires us to x-ray 10% of the welds on the pipeline. Summit's going to x-ray 100% of the welds on that pipeline. Before this pipeline would ever go into operation, one thing that you do is called a hydro test. So you fill the line with water, you pressurize it up to 125% of what the max operating pressure of that pipeline is going to be, and you have to keep it there for 8 hours. If you have any leaks on that pipeline, you have to drain that section down, isolate that leak, repair that leak, run that test again. So before any CO2 ever touches the inside of that pipeline, you have 100% certainty that that pipeline can hold 125% of the pressure that's required for that. There's a lot more. I don't want to take up too much time. There's a lot more in the safety concerns. I'd be more than glad to talk with anyone here about, honestly, about that. But I do want to touch on a few other things there. So there was a question about the test rupture. Has there been test ruptures done before? There have. And actually, I'm sure many people in the audience, if not you all yourselves, have seen a video. It looks like it was taken from a blimp of a test rupture CO2. You can see a cloud that comes out and disperses. It's sped up. That was actually a test rupture done in Europe. It was done by a company named DNV, which works on they do a lot of modeling for these things, and so they did a couple test ruptures to verify that their modeling was accurate. We have the report. There is an engineering report that was done of a real-life test rupture that can help and answers these questions about how fast does it disperse, where does it go? And the answer is within minutes and not very far. And I'm more than happy to sit down again with anybody and talk through that actual report. It was not done by Summit Carbon Solutions. It was done before Summit Carbon Solutions had, asked about any reports that were done. It was done years back. CO2 pipelines have been around for a long time. And actually, after the fact, Summit Carbon Solutions has reached out to DNV, and their senior principal engineer on that submitted written testimony to the PUC vouching for the safety of this pipeline, and in his testimony stated that this would be the safest pipeline operating in the United States. So it's not just Summit vouching for that. We also have an individual who is the CEO of PHMSA, which is that Pipeline Hazardous Safety Materials Administration, that has also vouched for the safety of this pipeline in written testimony to the Public Utilities Commission. So I want to be clear that we say what we can about it, but we do try to back up our information with facts. And if there are those in the audience that feel they haven't got those, I do apologize, and I hope there's an opportunity that we can talk and we can have a good conversation to share some of that information. One of the other things I do want to touch on is just that with the easements that we have, these easements are very specific because we want to make sure that our landowners are taken care of. Because one of the worst things we can do, if we're trying to build a pipeline and put this in operation, is make enemies of the people that we're trying to cross, that we're trying to operate a pipeline on. And so when we submit that easement, there's a lot of language. Everything in that is negotiable. On top of that, we submit maps of that easement that shows the entrance point, the exit point. We performed 3 different surveys on the land that would be a biological, a cultural, and a civil survey, which shows the exact GPS points that we're asking to cross this property at. It shows exactly on the map where that's at. We are restricted to those areas. If at a later point, we ask the landowner to shift the pipeline to a different location, any money that the landowner may have already agreed to sign on with us, they get to keep that, even if that route is shorter, even if we impact less land. However, in the easement specifically states that if we impact additional land, we're required to pay that additional, the additional money for any of those changes. But that's a negotiation that has to take place with the landowner that has already been signed. And as it stands today, we have made over 825 different route adjustments in the state of South Dakota alone, over 3,000 on this project, to help accommodate the request of landowners along the pipeline. And so again, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about this and go into a lot more detail on the project. But I did really want to touch on those two things. From the safety side, we are regulated very heavily by the federal government. There are over 5,000 miles of CO2 pipelines in operation today. We are not going to be the highest pressure. We're not going to be the most volume of CO2 pipelines. We're not doing anything new. We're just putting it in a different area to help out the ethanol plants and the ag industry in the Midwest. And then two, I wanted to talk a little more about the specifics of the easements, of what those look like, of the language that's in there. And if any one of you on the board would like to see an example easement, I'd be more than happy. I don't have them with me today, but I'd be more than happy to send you an example so that when individuals discuss the language in that easement, you're able to know exactly the language that they're talking about and exactly what that would actually look like. So I'll go ahead and I'll sit back down. But again, if there's any specific questions, whether that's here or any other time, I am more than happy to answer those questions.
What would be helpful is if you would come to our public hearing. That would be helpful.
Awesome. Do you have date for that?
Not yet,
Okay,
but we had one last month, so that would have been helpful for you to be here for that.
understood. Thank you.
I'm Carol Hoynes, 3112 West Auburn Hills, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I have land about 2.5 miles out of Canton. From the very first meeting I attended with Summit, I told them I did not want this pipeline going across my land because it was deadly. I can't get insurance for it, and I requested and talked to the field operators who told me, well, we can put in a request to move it. I followed up and I said, you know what? I want you to do that. I want you to put in a request to move this pipeline off of my property. And I want an email back that you have followed up and brought this up to the higher up people. I got one email back that they were considering it, and I've never heard from them since. Now, the first meeting was way back, as you know. Secondly, taxes. All these wonderful taxes that this pipeline is going to provide for this county are coming back for the first 10 years from the state, which means that we as property owners are probably paying for half of this. And then after that, our land gets devalued, which we take another kick in the butt. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's here. I would like to see a 24-inch dispersion example of a pipeline under 2,100 PSI. Because they say they can do this, but they do not show us. This deadly pipeline is going to kill people. They have these pipelines built across Texas, Mississippi. The one in Mississippi that broke was, people in the town were only 40 people, so there was no people that were killed because they were able to get to them. I don't know if you'd even get from Canton out to my property to save me if I got stuck with a combine out there in a sinkhole which broke a pipeline. Because you wouldn't have enough time to get there, and then when the EMTs got there, they wouldn't be able to get the equipment in because it takes the oxygen away. So I think this is deadly. We don't want it. They need to present facts. If they have all this, put it out here so I can see it. I want to see that dispersion of a 24-inch pipe breaking. I want to see how far that's going to unzip between the shutoff valves. It's my understanding it took quite a few minutes or a half an hour or more to shut off the valve, which was a 1 mile, 8-inch pipe dispersion in Mississippi. Thank you.
Anybody else?
lady there. I'm Tom Eastland. I live in Dayton Township, northwest of Canton.
What's your address, sir?
Pardon?
Your address?
47740 278th Street.
Thank you.
She brought up the fact that she had asked for I keep hearing over and over again from Summit Navigator that they want to do this on a voluntary basis. And yet, does it look like it? There's quite a line of us in a row there, about 5 miles at least, who don't want this thing. And yet, the people a mile on either side never been approached. So, kind of sounds to me like when they say the voluntary basis, what they really want is for us to volunteer to comply with whatever they want. And that seems to be about all for volunteerism. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, I failed to mention a couple of things here. That accident, or that natural accident, I'll call it, in Africa, the plume, the CO2 plume killed animals and humans up to 14 to 16 miles away from the source. So that gives you an idea. That's why I say there is no safe setback, and there is not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you all. And we will move on to old business. Toby, any old business?
No old business, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. We will move on to the public hearings. Our first item here is the application for a conditional use permit to allow the transfer of 2 building eligibilities.
Okay, good afternoon, Toby Brown with County Planning Office. This first application, as Madam Chair said, this is an application for a conditional use permit for a building eligibility transfer. The applicant for this item is Craig Sorum, property owner is Omar F. Peterson Living Trust et al., which means others. Essentially, location of this is 5.25 miles north of Canton. Subject property, I'll go off of the receiving parcel. The receiving parcel is identified on the zoning map as RC Rec Conservation. Receiving parcel is currently unimproved. There is what I'll call a split to that parcel to the north. That parcel is separately owned. That's owned by the rural water system out of Iowa. The receiving parcel is 57 acres in size. Again, this would be a transfer of 2 building eligibilities from a parcel that has prime agricultural land to this parcel, which I would say would best be described as non-prime agricultural land. The receiving parcel does have 1 building eligibility existing, so this would be 3 building eligibilities within that parcel. So staff did review the application, have some discussions with the applicant, identified that this application is consistent with the criteria standards that are within the ordinance. Therefore, staff does recommend approval with contingent on the 5 conditions that were placed in the staff report. A little bit of additional analysis though, is that there is some criteria that we talk about within the zoning regulations as far as the transfer of an eligibility. Primarily would be the suitability of the future site. One thing that is unique, typically, if you recall, when we do a building eligibility transfer, it's transferring from agricultural land to agricultural land. This particular properties, the transfer of the receiving parcel does have some development constraints. It does have floodplain, and like I mentioned, it's primarily not agricultural productivity soil with there. But again, this does cluster eligibilities away from agricultural property, and it does allow clustering of them on there. So again, staff does recommend approval contingent on those standards or conditions on the staff report. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Toby, so the 2 parcels are not owned by the same person?
Yes,
They are or they aren't?
they are.
What's the connection there?
I'll show you.
I'm trying to look at it as well.
So this is the sending parcel,
Okay.
Omar F. Peterson Trust et al., which is other.
Yep.
And then this is the receiving parcel, would be that same thing. Another thing that kind of this came up at the Board of Commissioners meeting last week is that the applicant did also submit an application to the auditor's office to vacate the statutory right-of-way. So that goes directly to the auditor's office, and then we got involved as a planning office, but that the statutory right-of-way is a township, so that application should have went to the township. It shouldn't have went to the Board of Commissioners. So that wasn't approved, but that was another item that was taking place. I should also say, in our staff's discussion with the applicant, the intention is to sell the receiving parcel for, for development or to a different party, but it won't be the applicant that's involved in what I'll call the development of the building eligibilities on the parcel, so. Okay.
Are those two eligibilities all that exist?
No, there'll be one remaining in the sending parcel.
Thanks, Toby.
Yep. Thank you.
The applicant can now come up to the podium and explain the proposal in further detail.
Good evening. My name is Craig Sorm. I reside at 4589 Hummingbird Trail Northeast in Prior Lake, Minnesota. I grew up in Sioux Falls. This is our family farm. My mother grew up on it along with Omer, her younger brother, and Ezra, her older brother. The farm is it's a century farm, I believe they call it, 100-year farm in the family. And that was important to Omer as the farmer to keep it in there as long as he was alive. He died a year ago in July. And on his deathbed, as it were, he told my cousin Mike that you guys can now sell the farm because it's undivided interest. So there's three owner groups. Omer's family is one, but it's under the trust. And then my cousin Deb and her brother's estate is the second, third, and then the fourth one is the Sorm family, which is me and my three siblings. So we have kind of a mixture of as many as 10 grandchildren involved in this. Our goal is to sell the farm. This development side was just to transfer a couple of building eligibilities over, just so we make it maybe more marketable to the people that may want to build a home there or develop that land. So that was really our primary plan. The land, if you go there, we used to go hunting down there. We were kids, and fishing and stuff like that. I understand now the river's come about 20 feet in, so we've lost a little ground there. But, and we sold part of the land to the rural water in Iowa. They asked to be able to pump water because we have an aquifer underneath the ground there years ago. So anyway, we're at the point now to where we've got just kind of trees and embankment where the old homestead was, which is no longer there, and then the river, and then the floodplain, as Toby was describing. So it's not much to grow on down there. So we're looking at trying to do something else with it. I think there's a lot of people that I'm assuming there might be some people in Sioux Falls that may want to build a home out there or elsewhere. I resided in Washington, D.C. for a few years, or outside, I should say, and 20 miles took an hour and a half. So that's not the same out here. Anyway, so that's where we sit. Do you guys have any questions? Much less complicated than the last presentation, I know. Okay, thank you.
I will now open the floor for comments in favor of the application. I will now ask those with comments in opposition of the application to please step forward. Hearing none, I will now, I apologize.
I'm Dave Harmson from, my address is 908 South Tama, Rock Rapids, Iowa. I'm the operations manager for Lion and Sioux Rural Water. We are the rural water who owns that little piece of ground. Toby, could you bring up that map for me, please? I don't want to. I waited because for it, against it. I'm for it and not against it. You can see on the map, if I can put this cursor down here, this is a driveway, okay? Our well site, and I've got to basically, if I can make my hand, okay, follow the cursor, We're going around like this, okay, and then we got to come back, okay? That's a driveway. I've got an easement signed by Mr. Sorum and the Omar family. I guess my concern is this gets sold in parcels that I still have access to my well field. I've got 2 wells on the South Dakota side. That's my only access to get there. With the drought and everything that we have going on, can I eliminate them wells? Absolutely not. Those are pretty decent production wells. So that's my concern, that this easement will transfer with the lots that are sold. Okay, normally the easements do go with that.
Right.
Okay, so that's my concern. If I'm not sure, Craig, how the lots are gonna be divided or whatever. Beautiful country out there. I'm all for it, absolutely. But I have to have access yet that this easement allows me to get back there. Just a concern that I have.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's
Thank you.
have Mr. Sorum come up and,
Can I comment?
yes, please.
I'm glad he's here, actually. I've already talked to at least their attorney about, they want to donate that piece of land, that piece you can't get to anyway, that's next to it, because it's in the very top, you can see a little bit of a dip there. Eventually, we all know it's going to be absorbed by the river. But yeah, we're going to make sure that there's still an easement. We're at the beginning of this. We're trying to figure out who's going to buy this. If they want to develop the whole section into more than whatever it is, they'd have to put in the road and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. And with that, the easement would have to be in place. And we would require that for anybody that buys it, that has to be accessible by the rural water. So that's something that we already have on our to-do list or on our bucket list, so.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Perfect, good. Anybody else? Okay. I will now close the floor. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of the 2 building eligibilities with the 5 contingencies listed in the staff report.
Second, Johnson.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion, okay. I will do roll call. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. Motion has passed. Thank you.
Chairman Hogan, I'm going to abstain from the next one.
All right.
Okay. This next item is a conditional use permit to transfer 1 building eligibility. The applicant is the Jared H. Metler Revocable Living Trust. Property owner is the same. This location is 5 miles, so it would be west of the Fairview corporate limits. The receiving parcel, again, I'm going off the receiving parcel as opposed to the sending parcel. Receiving parcel does have some agricultural structures on it currently, but it's an 80 acres that is primarily undeveloped except for some few agricultural structures on there. The receiving parcel does have 1 building eligibility, so this would be an additional building eligibility that would be transferred to the property. A little bit about the background on this is that Mr. Metler used to own these parcels previously. During the sale of those parcels, there wasn't communication about the transfer of an eligibility or the purchase of a building eligibility. So this is really kind of a cleanup of a previous purchase of the property. And so in discussion with their legal counsel, the current owners of what I'll call these tracts over to the northeast, they did what we typically do with the transfers, is that they transferred by deed, quitclaim deed, to Mr. Metler, so he is the current owner of the property. And then with this application, we will transfer that building eligibility to this. So this is really to kind of clean up a prior sale of the property. But again, as far as the staff's analysis, the criteria for the standards for this type of an application, staff's analysis and discussion with the applicant is really those criteria are met. It does transfer and cluster the building eligibilities. So staff does feel that this application is consistent with the regulations and ordinances, and we do recommend approval contingent upon the 5 conditions that were placed in the staff report. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions that you have for staff at this time.
Any question for staff?
Actually, I do, Madam Chair. Enlighten me a little bit, Toby. This is an existing 80-acre tract,
The receiving one, yes, it is.
and you had deemed that there was only one eligibility on it?
On the, let me go back here once. I misspoke. There should be 2 there, so. You're
That's
correct.
what I was-
Yeah, so there'll be 3 there. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. I'm sure the applicant will be happy with that as well, so. But essentially, it's just to clean up a prior sale of it, so. With that, is there any more questions for staff?
Any other questions? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right. If I can have the applicant come up now and explain the proposal.
Gerald Metler, do you need an address?
Yes, please.
2888 480th Avenue, Canton.
Okay.
And I guess I simply refer to what Toby has already told you, that we sold the land, and since their eligibilities in Lincoln County have value, which the county commissioners have established by making it a 40-acre commitment for one eligibility. When we sold this piece of pasture ground to the Veldhuisens, in the contract, they stipulated that they had no interest in purchasing that eligibility. And so now it should have been done at that time when we actually made that arrangement and that agreement and transferred property. And so now we are going back, since Mario, the wife of Kevin Van Veldhuizen, is now the sole owner of that. And she said that she would agree to transfer the building eligibility to us. And that's pretty obvious, since she gave me a quitclaim deed today. And we're obviously just trying to get the eligibility moved immediately into our property, and that would give us 3 eligibilities there. So, any questions?
Just for clarification, the relationship, you own all the parcel, but you do not have relationship to the existing parcel for the transfer?
No. Not at all. Kevin and Mario purchased this. Kevin,
When was the sale?
a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah. They moved here now. They're split up in selling the property, and she wishes to sell it, but she can't sell it with an eligibility.
So to clarify though, is that Gerald bought, or it's a quitclaim deed by the current owner to Gerald?
Yes, yes. Oh,
So
okay.
that's what's
Oh,
been done.
Sure.
Of the property itself?
Yes, we have to do that entire property and then sign it back to them.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, all right. I will now open the floor for comments in favor of the application. All right, seeing none, I will ask for comments in opposition of the application. All right, seeing none, I will close the floor to public comment. Is there a motion on the application?
I'll make a motion to approve with the 5 conditions. Jungling.
Second, Green.
All right, there's a motion in a second.
Madam Chair, question for staff again.
Okay,
Toby, just for clarification, and I understand, I appreciate the efforts they're going through, but was the quick claim deed actually recorded?
Yes.
It was. All right, thank you.
Yep.
okay. Motion in a second to approve. Any discussion? No? All right. I'll take roll. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. All right, thank you.
Okay, this last application for this evening, this is an application for a conditional use permit. The applicant is Makota Holdings. Let me get back up to there once. The applicant is Makota Holdings.
Do we need to get Commissioner Scott back in here, by chance?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Let Eric's back in.
Yeah. I think so,
Jerry's
yeah.
out there.
So again, this is a conditional use permit application. The applicant is Makota Holdings. Property owner is the same. Location of this is approximately 6.5 miles, would be northwest of the city of Beersford. Subject parcel is currently, our size is currently A1 agricultural zoned. It is approximately 61 acre parcel. Parcel is improved with some associated equipment associated with a project that was, I believe, 2 years ago to the east of the property. The applicant is proposing to develop approximately 20 acres of the property into what we would call a milk condensing plant, or I'll describe as our reverse osmosis plant, which I'm not a scientist, so I'll let the applicant talk more about this. But the better understanding the staff has is that this process really takes the water out of the milk, and so it assists with the transportation-related aspects of the dairy operation. So staff did review this application, have some discussions with the property owner, identified that this application as an agriculture-related operation, conditional use, is consistent with the standard of the regulations. Staff does recommend approval of this application with the 6 conditions. But I would like to add a 7th condition at this time. So I did receive some communication from the township to the south of this, Delaware Township, Brooklyn Township. They were concerned that tonight they couldn't be here because of, and there might be some of them that are here, but they were concerned because tonight is a heavy night for some townships because of the appeal process. But in discussions with them and discussions in the past with the Delaware and Brooklyn Township, I would like to add a 7th condition if it is approved. And I'm gonna try to get the wording right, but essentially, the 7th condition would be the county planning staff shall facilitate an annual meeting of Brooklyn and Delaware Township and the owner-operator of the plant. And so I think a lot of times it's just communication that's an important part of these different types of things. Willing to add that as a condition to facilitate that so that we can get everybody in the room, discuss any concerns or questions that might pop up, and then address any of those things. As with the rest of the conditions in there, I think it's always, we're trying to work with the townships to make sure that their concerns and their needs are met with the approval of this development. So with that, again, staff does recommend approval with the 6 plus the 1 that we just recommended. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff.
Toby, this is zoned agriculture?
Correct, yep.
Is it your opinion that the dairy plant fits that zoning use?
Yeah, I think it clearly would meet that type of a conditional use permit, yeah. And we've treated different operations that way. The operation directly to the south of this would be the same type of a use.
Being the methane digester?
Yep. Otherwise, the applicant's in attendance to answer any questions that you might have for them, so. Thank you.
If we can have the applicant come up.
My name is Tim Dendalk. I'm from Michigan. I'm here with my son who lives there on the property.
Can we get your address for the record, please?
4101 Reeds Lake Boulevard, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay, thank you.
The proposal that the plant that we're proposing would take raw milk from the dairies. It would first be separated, similar to the same process that happened, gone on for years. Cream would be separated off. That would be about 10% of the volume of the milk. The remaining milk would go through a series of filters. There's no heat or anything like that involved. Goes through a series of filters at which the product at the other end is 30% of the volume that the original product was. The water goes to the dairy for cow water and washing. All of it gets used. There's no waste type water or polluted water or anything in the process. And so that's what we would cut the trucking from the dairy by about 60% of the trucks leaving with the volume of water. We increase the value of the products going directly to the users. In other words, the cream, instead of going to another plant and being separated, would go directly to the cream user. The skim would go directly to the skim user. The cheese plant is in South Dakota. The skim would go in South Dakota. The cream would probably go over to Iowa. The water is an asset to the farm. Right now, we're using water from the Lincoln County and from the large pipeline, so this would lower our needs for that. Trucks would go down 468 to the south to the highway there, and not by any homes, which actually would change their route from where they probably go now. Would cut out 9 loads a day of trucking, creates 15 jobs, and reduces emissions. So.
Tim, would this just be for the 2 dairies that are on site there?
At this point, we only have we have the contracts for those 2 dairies, yeah.
So you won't be hauling milk in from other sites to this plant?
We could. There is capacity. We don't have any arrangements to do that, but there would be room to do that, yes.
Well, what's the capacity gonna be?
About, there would be, right now, we produce about 15 loads of milk. The capacity of the plant would be about 40, but we would reduce the loads that we're producing on the dairy itself. So
potentially you could have more traffic if you max out the capacity.
if we maxed out the capacity, there would be more traffic.
Because you'd have to truck that milk in.
Milk would come in, but that would, if you did that, and we're a long way from, we gotta get our deal handled first. We're long, but if we did that, then the trucks coming in would be loaded with milk, so going out would be loaded with the condensed product, so it wouldn't be a 1-for-1. So. But there would be more capacity, but at this point, we have no arrangements or anything to do that. The only thing we have for sure is obviously our own milk.
Now, Tim, I spoke with Casey Wright, who's on the Delaware Township. He's our clerk. And I see some of our other township folks are here tonight. Maybe they will comment on this later, but just for the board's knowing, your road agreement with Delaware Township is that, as far as I understand it, is that you maintain your own roads going those 4 miles coming in and off of the highways, and then Delaware Township reimburses you for what would be normal use, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And
So that agreement would be
continued.
regardless of your construction, further traffic, that would still be the agreement and the township itself wouldn't be
There's no
under any
intention
extra
to change that at all. And also, we, I think as you know, put a lot of money in to improve those roads from what they were now. And the guy who did them did a really nice job. They've been brought up to really, they're as hard as a diamond. So.
So back to this, to max the capacity of the plant, if you got to a point where you wanted to do that, would it be would it be your own milk coming in there, or would you be purchasing it from somebody else?
We would probably at that point be purchasing, because we don't have milk that's our own, that's not under contract. The two dairies we have in Lincoln County are really what we have. Now, we do have an interest in another dairy, but that's under contract with another buyer, so, even that would have to be purchased from the partner and stuff.
Okay.
Mr. Brown mentioned adding a seventh contingency on this. I don't know if he had expressed this to you prior to the meeting at all, but if that seventh contingency of having the meeting between you guys and the two townships, are you in
great.
favor of that?
Yeah, it'd be great, you bet, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's all, unless there's other questions, I think that would be all I have. And if you
Any
have,
other questions?
if you have questions as you go on, I'm happy to answer.
All right. Okay, I will now open the floor for comments in favor of the application.
Good evening. Good evening. Nathan Jensen, 29843 473rd Avenue, Beersford, South Dakota, 57004. I am here in support of the Dendalk family's milk processing project. It not only creates 15 jobs in our community, but also increases the tax revenue for our local school board, which I serve as a member. I've also had the opportunity to sell commodities to the Dendalk family over the last 7 years, and it's been a great experience. In addition, when asked to contribute to local causes, like our ESL program at the Beersford School District, Tim Jr. has stepped up and donated funds to support those, as well as many other projects when asked. So I ask that you support this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in favor? Okay, I will ask for those comments in opposition.
My name is Bethany Eric. I live a half mile south of the dairy. My address is 46747 291st Street. Before you approve this conditional use permit, I would like you to hold their feet to the fire on some of the promises that have been made to this county. We have not seen those promises to be held true. I live so close to them that their noise wakes me up in the middle of the night with a brand-new house with high-efficiency windows. They've said that there would be no noise. They would say that there would be no odor beyond it. I've had neighbors drive up to my house and say, I could smell this flume from 2 miles away. That's a problem. That's a problem. I want to be a good neighbor, but they have to be good neighbors to us. And that's all that I'm asking for. I'm not asking for any special considerations. I just would like to have the protections that are due to me as a landowner. So while the allure of corporate agriculture is enticing, right? We see big dollars, we see all sorts of things, but what we don't see is my quality of life right there next door to them. So I'm concerned about giving them additional permits right now when I can't see and I can't logically say that they've fulfilled their obligation to our community. First of all, in the requirements for them to submit this application, there was a requirement of notice. That did not occur. We were not notified that this application was in process. I did not receive a piece of mail. I didn't see any signs on their property notifying us this. I found this on the county agenda. It feels subversive. I don't know if that was in its intent, but it felt that way. Tonight's meeting was held on the same night as our township's and they were unavailable to participate in Brooklyn Township. They have other obligations, so those personnel that are on those boards could not be here to voice their concerns. Road haul agreements were discussed. They were not brought to Brooklyn Township officers. There's just a lot of things that I have questions about, and I've yet to understand or see the answers. So why should we let them expand right now? The answer is we shouldn't until we see that they're meeting the obligations of their current permit. Furthermore, the application for the conditional use permit has several obligations to them, and they were not met. I'd like to know the distance from the property lines. Gentlemen, your plan does not identify how far that is from my property. So there's no distance to property lines. The height of the building is not exemplified on that plan. That's a requirement of county permit. The total number of trucks per day, we've talked a little bit about that, and pay real close attention to the verbiage there. No, we're not planning on increasing the trucks, but we have the capacity to. So I would ask that we put in, if we do approve this, that you put a limit on the number of trucks that are come forth. Furthermore, what are the hours of operation of this facility? Are we a 24-hour day? That doesn't sound conducive to my quality of life. And how about lighting, noise, odor, and fencing and screening that are mentioned in number 4, but not followed for their current conditional use permit? Furthermore, wastewater. If they're gonna have to, this food-grade facility, they're gonna have some chemicals going into their water at some point to clean this, like a bleach, something that is gonna be required. How do we know that that's not gonna leach onto my land because I'm below them on the topographical map? So is it gonna roll off when they have stormwater runoff? We asked a little bit about how many gallons of water. They were pretty excited about reclaiming 200,000 gallons. But how many more are they gonna require for this facility? And how much more electricity are they going to need? So, and the last one is what type of chemicals will be expended into the air? I appreciate that Mr. Jindal referenced the fact that this is a chemical-free facility. I'd like to know more about that, and I would like that in concrete, on the record information. And I think all of you would too. We all have to live in our community. So I just feel that that would be fair. And the last one I have is the fact that 48,000 square feet, that's what's indicated. That's larger than light industrial and general industrial in our county zoning ordinance. Are we sure this should be ag? Are we absolutely 100% positive with the number of traffic, the sheer size of this facility? Are we positive that this should be out in a rural area? We want to make sure that our right and our way of life is protected. That's all I'm asking. Be good neighbors, folks. I don't need any special contingencies. I just want to make sure that my land, air, water, and quality of life is protected. And I thank you for your time and attention tonight to that fact. That's being a good neighbor. I'm not bringing a mess to them, and I don't want it coming to me. So it's fair, right? I don't think I haven't brought up any points that any of you would be alarmed by if it was your property. So, any questions for me after that? And I do hope we'll get a response on some of these questions.
Where do you live?
It's just a half a mile south between the two dairies. So Mount Hope and Great Plains.
Okay.
I am directly south of them.
And you were saying that you were woken up by the noise, like in the middle of the night, 10
Absolutely.
o'clock, 1 o'clock in the
Middle
morning?
of the night, 3 in the morning. I have video evidence, if you'd like to see it. I have video evidence, and I have evidence to show you exactly the decibel level and video with timestamp. So, yes, it's a challenge. I've tried to be a good neighbor. Hearing about this expansion actually turned my stomach. I don't want to be that person. I do not want to be that person, but I have to be. I have work to do. I have a very important work to do. And I want to be able to do that and sleep in my home.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions for me? All right. Thank you all.
Toby, was this published? She said she had no notification of it. Was it published? I would assume it was.
So the ordinance requires two forms of notification. The first would be direct mailing by the applicant within 500 feet. Her property exceeds the
Okay.
publication requirement. The property is posted as well as on the agenda as well too. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else in opposition?
My name is Joyce Tevet, and I'm 46802 292nd Street, Beersford, South Dakota, and I am in opposition. I do echo everything that Bethany just stated. I am approximately about a mile from her, and everything that she said is true, and to the letter. And I would like to address, I'm not sure what Tim's last name is, but I would like to address you and what you stated. One big concern that I have is this. He stated, I have it written down, quote, possibility of milk shipped in. End of quote. Am I correct on stating that? Okay, I did hear that correctly. And so what is really a concern here is, okay, number one, just like Bethany mentioned, zoned ag. I do not believe that this is zoned ag. This is a factory. Plain and simple. You can call it whatever you want. Look it up in Webster's dictionary. A plant, factory, they're pretty much the same thing. And this sounds like this, once this cat gets out of the bag, so to speak, it's gonna keep getting bigger and bigger. We're gonna have milk coming in from who knows where. I did hear him mention something about a partner in this, a purchasing milk partner. Am I correct
Ma'am.
in
ma'am,
stating that?
Ma'am,
Okay.
you have to direct up to us, please.
Yes, but I did hear there's a partner involved in this. We don't know anything about that operation. We need to stop and we need to think about this. We need to figure out what's going on before anything can proceed. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in opposition?
My name's Steve Holmberg, 46551 293rd Street, Central South Dakota, and I'm the chairman of Brooklyn Township. Difficult for me to get here this evening, but just so we could have a quorum at our meeting. But I decided this was important enough I should be here. I would echo the concerns that Bethany has and she has stated. As a township, we are very concerned about the traffic on roads. I know that this facility is not in our township, but there's a huge amount of traffic that takes place in our township for parts of their operation already. Them stating that there would be less traffic because of the condensation of this milk product, but then on the other hand, stating that there could be, 40 more loads of capacity that they could come up to is very concerning for Brooklyn Township. I'm also concerned about any types of pollution also, and where all the water and all that is going. I guess I would state at this time, I feel that perhaps the state and the county here are failing the townships by not checking with us before approving large-scale operations like the one we're talking about here. And what effects this might have on our townships. I think this needs to be talked about before you approve permits or conditional, these permits. This needs to be brought to us and talk to us also so we could have our input before you approve these. And I don't know that that was done and hasn't been done before. We're talking about the seventh item put in there, which is fine, that's great. But I think this needs to be talked about and decided on before you approve it. This has to all be worked out before that time, not after you've already approved it. So I guess, representing Brooklyn Township, and I'm a landowner in close proximity to them also. I guess I would ask that you at least not approve anything at this time without more information. Some sort of studies done to find out what really is going to take place with an operation of this size coming in. And then talk to the different townships around them and see if they have any other input on it also. So that's why I'm here tonight, I guess, is to ask you at this time not to approve something before you really have studied it more, talked with the townships that will be affected, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments in opposition? Okay,
Anybody else? I have a question.
okay.
For Toby, can you come back up here? So what, I guess I'm still kind of on the why is this zoned agricultural deal? And so can you show us the ordinance that states that this falls into that bucket?
Yeah, I mean, in the staff analysis, we list the conditional use permit, which is the uses in agriculture-related operations involving the handling, storage, transporting, and shipping of farm products.
Mhm.
There's no specific definition for that, but.
So are
Yep.
you, I guess, when I look at that, and I know it maybe doesn't say it word for word, but I think about that like we're doing that with our own products, right? And now, when this has the potential to purchase products from somebody else and bring them in, to me, that seems like more of a industrial or commercial use, maybe. What are your thoughts on that, or don't you think that matters as much?
I guess, that's up to the board on that aspect of it. I would say in the discussions that I've had, I don't know if we necessarily talked too much that there was gonna be additional milk coming into the plant, I guess.
Mhm.
It was more that this was for the dairies there, but, I'd say defer that more to the applicant to kind of clarify what they intend by that or mean by that.
Well, we asked him, and I mean, those were the answers we got, is that, to max the potential of the capacity, that they'd have to purchase milk and bring it in. And so, to me, I guess I'd like some more time to look at that and see if, I guess I'm concerned, excuse me. I'm concerned for the folks that are in opposition. I think there's definitely some questions need answered, but me personally, I'd like to look into the zoning of it. I don't know if it's zoned properly.
Okay.
And so, anyway, thanks. Those were the questions I had for you.
Yep.
Anybody else have comments?
I think based on, Madam Chair, our definition as we have it, it's an agricultural product. I think it probably merits some discussion to move forward if it's something that needs to be addressed in the future, but I don't know if it's as much different than hay or corn and someone converts it to feed cattle or something like that. It's an agricultural product. Yes, it is produced right there. He did indicate that's a possibility of some coming from somewhere else, but we ship corn. I farm from Davis to T, South Dakota. We move grain from one township to another to our facility and then onto an elevator. I don't know that we.
How do we, not to interrupt, but how do we zone like a grain elevator, for example? like Eastern Farmers, what are
What's the definition of a grain elevator? Is it just storage, or is it commercially buying and selling? And
commercially buying from other people, I guess. I mean, how do we zone that?
I defer to the staff for that question, but.
I mean, like the CHS facility out on the Worthing exit, how is that? How's that zoned? Well, I know how it is, I guess it's on the map, but. I mean, the difference, Commissioner Poppins, when you talk about, yeah, you farm from Davis to T, but you're trucking your own product into your own facility.
And before I was
think
interrupted,
it would be different.
they are transporting and processing at this time their product. Could I take grain from somebody else and put into my bins? Absolutely.
Sure.
But I'm not doing that at this present time. My point is, I concur that this probably needs some further discussion, but by our definition, I think it meets our criteria at this time. That's my only statement this time. Thank you.
And I would think we could put a contingency on it of their own product at this point, right? Like, if they want to expand beyond utilizing their own product, they would need to come back to adjust the conditional use permit.
I would probably disagree. That would be a stipulation that I don't know that I could support, because how do we get into their financial situation to see, that type of operation? Again, good points, but I don't know, based on our current regulation, and language, how we could add stipulations such as that, so. And again, I defer, to council if it can be, but.
Well, and to your point, I guess the question I have, and you're right, I mean, if you're, at what point, how much grain can you buy, say, per se, from your neighbors before you become a commercial grain elevator, and then, I don't know if any of that's defined or what.
Yeah, I mean, by that definition, a dairy that buys grain from neighbors to
Yeah.
use for their,
I don't know,
yeah, so.
To me, it just seems, I'd like some clarification on that, maybe.
Well, we happen to be working on a comprehensive plan, which will lead to a lot of, I think, changes in the future, so definitely something that could be approached during that as well. Good points.
Do we have a motion?
On one other point too, and I'm still undecided either way, but I mean, with them reducing the amount of loads right now, being be very entrepreneur and come up with a new process, with that digester there and everything like that. I do give them credit for being that way, but then on the other hand too is that really ag when you start going that way? But just my thoughts out loud.
Now, we are still open for public comment,
Yes,
correct?
I was just gonna say,
Does anyone from Delaware Township have anything they'd like to add or be on the record of?
Okay. Okay.
For or against, I guess, at this point.
I guess Dana Knutson, 46526 291st Street. I just got on the township board, so I'm just kind of finding out about this. So I guess I would like it tabled if at all possible, so we got some more clarification on what this is all consists of and stuff, since just coming in. Again, worried about road agreements, road haul agreements with the township, that nothing's been done in the past as far as my knowledge, so that'd be a major concern of a lot of neighbors and people that live in the township, of all the extra traffic and stuff, so I guess I'm concerned about it just because short notice, just finding out about it, so. Thank you.
Question for staff, if I may, Toby, has there been any complaint filed concerning this operation as far as the road usage?
I mean, the township, we've had discussions about different issues that are there, but no complaints, no. I would say no complaints. I would say though, again, is the condition that we've placed on there. First is, we did change the policy, so the Delaware Township was notified at the same time that everyone else was by letter to each board member and things like that. We didn't notify Brooklyn Township because that's not the home township of that. But I think, you know, the condition that we add on there that they have to comply with the townships, and I'll say that to Delaware tonight, is if they're not, let me know, and we'll bring them in for review. I mean, if you're not in compliance with those conditions, we'll bring you in for review, and then you can revoke their permit. So I would say that to Delaware, I'd say that to any township. We put that condition on every single conditional use permit tonight, and for the past few months, we've done that. So I mean, that's, you know, I think, you know, one, we don't have the authority to require the township or them to do anything, but if they do something with the dairy and the township, we'll agree to put it as a condition that we'll, you know, stand by it, so. On that aspect of it. As far as the rest of it discussion, I think the parties are all here tonight. If you have questions about the operation, those different types of things, I would encourage you to ask the applicant those questions tonight and clarify it. I would, to answer Commissioner Scott's question, the operation, most of the, what I'll call elevators and those different types of things are this use. That's the use that we, through that conditional use permit. So farmer's elevator and all those are all this type of a use. It's a pretty broad definition. I agree with Commissioner Poppins, is that this is something we want to look at when we update the comprehensive plan, we look at it. It does, we've put a lot of different operations under that, all with the caveat that they've been agriculture-related operations. But in a way, it does allow, you know, what you could call industrial, commercial type uses into the agricultural area under the guise of agricultural uses. So, but that's for a different date, different time, but again, if there's any further questions, again, the applicant's in attendance tonight as well, so.
Could we, on condition number 3, where it says it must comply with the road authorities' access requirements, improvements, and/or standards, if any, it says Delaware Township, could we also add Brooklyn in there, even though they're not in Brooklyn, but we could say Delaware and Brooklyn Townships? So address a lot of the concerns on both districts.
Please, yeah. And just state your name and your address, please.
Tim Dundal, 46785 290th Street, Beersford. A truck from this facility should never enter Brooklyn Township, and we can put an agreement with Delaware Township. We have that road haul agreement, and we've been in contact with multiple board members and haven't heard any complaints on this issue of this plant.
Would you be opposed then if we added that Brooklyn Township as well to that?
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
I'm Louis Vanderlaan, Delaware Township, 469th Avenue, Beersford. The concern on the roads, the dairy is responsible for 4 roads in our township. And they are the finest roads in our township. They have more than exceeded their agreements to maintain these roads. And I would ask some of the opposition here tonight if the dairy was here before they came to the area. Thank you.
Yes.
I would like to address that question. Were we here before the dairy was here? When I bought my land with my husband, who has now passed away as a result of a heart attack on our land, the original property that we found and bought had the 4,250 head. I found documentation where these folks had told our county they were not going to get any bigger. In the year following my husband's death, they put 6,900 more head on there and the digester. So the property was there understood. But they had promised publicly in documents with you guys, with the town, with the newspapers, that they were not planning to get any larger. So let's just be aware that what they say isn't always what they do. Thank you.
Sure. I think we need to be really careful with verbiage. I heard the word never, a truck never enters Brooklyn Township. I am from Brooklyn Township, and I've seen plenty of trucks from the dairy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do you all have any, oh, okay.
I said never as a result of this project, not to silage or, feed hauling. Thank you.
Okay, all right. We're just going to go ahead and close the floor to public comment. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll offer a motion to approve with the stipulations, including the adding of Brooklyn Township in number 3 and the 7th stipulation that Toby had added at the beginning of this.
Second, Green.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion amongst the board?
I do think one thing that's important to remember tonight is we are working on this conditional use for the plant. We're not doing a referendum on the actual dairies that are in place and in operation. So I know it's for those of us in the community that might get trucks confused and things like that. There are certain things that are probably going into both townships. I do see where Tim's coming from on this, where it is gonna be a lot more possible to steer the milk trucks places that silage trucks and feed hauling trucks go to, so.
Yeah, and I'll just, I guess, I'll support, I'm gonna support this. But I would like, hopefully we can look into that, because this does open, the zoning portion, my zoning concerns. It opens up something to me, I guess that I wasn't really aware of, and I think that's something we definitely need to look at, is these larger ag facilities just kind of get, like FCS grain, I mean, that's a full-out commercial business, and that doesn't have to be rezoned. I don't know if it needs to happen or not, but I think that, just in point, this brought up good discussion, and hopefully that's something we can look at in the comprehensive plan. And so currently, they meet all they meet all the rules and regulations and ordinances that we have, and so I feel like I need to support that. I'm always concerned, and I'm glad, since I've gotten on this board, we went from never talking about townships to now we have a lot of active participations from the townships. We have a lot of communications with them. They end up in a lot of our additional conditions, and I think that's awesome. And it sounds to me like there is a road haul agreement already in place, and the township has the lever in condition number 3 to do what they need to do to continue to maintain the safety and integrity of their roads and right-of-ways. Along with that, then there's gonna be condition number 7, and I think, so as residents of your township, I think this gets, a lot of these concerns can be handled at more of a local level with your township board. So, thanks for everybody's comments and participation. I think all these, the more people that participate in this helps us all have better discussion and helps us in the future.
Agree. Anybody else? Scott?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, I will take roll. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hogan is a yes. Congratulations, it passed. All right. Toby, we'll now move on to new business.
Okay, thank you. So the first item is new business, kind of transitions into the second item, new business. So the update, the Board of Commissioners did take action at their previous meeting. And an executive session, came out of executive session, remanded the application of Mr. Ventura back to you as the Planning Commission. So transition into the work session part of it is the two instructions that the board gave to the Planning Commission was to take additional public input. And then the second part of it would be to consult with legal counsel. And so in order to accomplish that, we have to schedule a public hearing, of course, so that we can notify the public and then take action on that. So I guess what I would request at this time is that we would set the public hearing for the next Planning Commission meeting. I did have some discussions with the chair about what could be the earliest we could do it. With the publication requirements and things like that, the earliest we could possibly do it would be the week prior to the regular meeting. And so I guess I'll defer that to you if you want to wait till the regular meeting to go through that. And then I think at that time, I guess I'll start there first is kind of, that's what staff is kind of recommending, is that you would set a public hearing so that we can address primarily the two items that the Board of Commissioners instructed back.
Wasn't legal going to be here tonight?
No, legal will be here when we set the public hearing, so.
So I'm confused, Toby, how this got sent back to us in the first place, or couldn't the commissioners just take action on what we sent them, voted it up or down and start over, or what was the, I guess I don't get it. Help me out.
Well, I guess I would say that I know as much as you do as far as what the.
I mean, it passed our board unanimously.
The recommendation passed the Planning Commission. The next step would have been to set a first reading and a second public hearing with the Board of Commissioners. They felt back out of executive session saying that they want to remand it back to you. Now, I thought about that afterwards, and then I thought more about this, is that 7 years ago, none of you were on this board, but we went through probably the biggest controversial ordinance amendment in Lincoln County history, which was the wind energy conversion systems. That was remanded back to the Planning Commission a number of times, primarily because, one, I'll say it is, I think it's humility for them to say that you guys are more the day-to-day experts of kind of the ordinance aspects of it. And so they want to make sure that you guys take a look at it from all aspects of it. Again, there was a lot of good testimony tonight that wasn't really testimony, it was just public comment. But in order to accomplish those two instructions, I think we got to go back through that process again on that part of it. So in order to accomplish those two instructions, we have to notify for a public hearing on that part of it.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
In staff's assessment, do you feel that at the last meeting, we met all of the requirements for public comment? So in listening to the comments by the full county commission, it was remanded back because we did not get any testimony from opposition. Now, we sit in this, we had numerous things we listened to tonight that had no opposition to it, yet we move forward and make decisions on that. So I'm assuming that we met our requirements that we have for posting and all of that. Or I guess part of my confusion is, did we err somewhere, and how do we fix, I guess, that error in the future if what one of the commissioners said was that, you know, we're gonna send it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission because we didn't hear from opposition. Which, you know, if opposition doesn't come, we don't table it until, and beg opposition to come. So I guess that's my confusion in the process.
Well, I think my answer to that would be is no, there was no error in the notification process, that the state law requires that we publish a notice in the legal newspaper. And for those who are real eagle readers on this thing, we actually published it twice because it was originally scheduled for the January meeting, but the T newspaper missed the publication, so I had to pull the agenda item. So, and then we published, for the February meeting. So no, the statutory requirement was met on that. But I think that with that direction, what we're gonna do on the next notice is whenever we set it is we'll send direct notification to those individuals on the other side, I guess. That's how we're gonna, I guess, how staff is gonna recommend that we notify, I guess, to meet the requirement that the board has instructed, so.
What if as a board, we decided that we don't feel we need to have another hearing and we want to send it back to the county commissioners?
What if we decide that we held a public hearing as we should have, and the proponents decided it wasn't important enough to show up, so we voted, we decided we wanted to accept the zoning ordinance and go forward, and we're prepared to vote again this evening and say, we're gonna go on. Because Commissioner Aaron's decided that we were just being one-sided, which we really can't be two-sided when they don't show up.
Yeah, I don't know how to address a lot of these comments, I guess. I'll call them comments at that, but I think at this stage, they've remanded it back with those two instructions. Again, from my standpoint, I don't know if you can accomplish those two things without having an additional public hearing to do that.
But-
Yeah, go ahead.
So are we, I guess the question that Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Hogan are asking is, are we within our authority to just send it back to the commission as is?
And not hold it.
Because I guess the problem I have with it, by having them remanded or whatever back to us, is I could see if that would happen, like, if they would have made some changes to what we had sent to them, right? So if they would have said, well, no, I don't like this one and this one, these things, and marked it off and sent it back to us, and then you take additional public comment, and we work through it again, but basically, it's the exact same thing that we talked about last month, and we just had some public comment here tonight, and it was the exact same public comment that, basically the same stuff, and now we're just gonna do it again next month. I guess, to me, it seems like a waste of time. It seems like it's a waste of everybody's time, and my position is I'd just as soon, I haven't changed my view on it yet, so I'd just soon send it back to the county commissioners and have them do what they're gonna do with it.
I think it should go through their process. I would agree with you completely, Commissioner Scott, because to just send it back to us with no recommendations and as a board, I feel like we're absolutely getting used.
Right, because they don't want to make is it because they don't want to make the
If there's
decision?
something that needs to actually be changed with it, I
Right.
think they should
Well, I think,
change it and
Yeah,
send
I-
it back.
They haven't, to my knowledge, it wasn't an agenda item, and it
No.
didn't even really go through their full process, did it?
No, they went into, here's another thing. They went into executive session, which wasn't on the agenda, that it was about the pipeline, but yet their lobbyists showed up to the executive session.
well, let's, so again, where we're at is they've remanded it back to you with two, what I would call two instructions on that. I would say the second part of the instruction, the recommendation of legal counsel, discussion with legal counsel, I think staff would like to get involved in that part of it too. because I think there's some things that legal counsel wants to point out specifically with the ordinance, that there's probably some things that they want to identify and present to you, as well as staff does too.
Could that be done on the county commission level versus our level and just save the political football?
Well, it's, it's much easier to review those things and go through that process at this level. And again, your role in this process is to be the experts of the zoning part of it, to look at it, and to make sure that it's there. And so without going more into it, I definitely think that with the additional public hearing, you're gonna allow testimony. You're also gonna have legal counsel and myself probably going through the analysis of what the actual ordinance is.
But why didn't we do that the first time?
Yeah,
then?
exactly.
I would say, why didn't Mead stand
I
up
mean,
here
legal
and tell us
counsel
what
was here
was the
last month. Why
problem?
didn't we go through that?
Can't speak to that.
If now it's important, why wasn't it important
Yeah,
last month?
I can't speak to that, so, but, yeah, but that's gonna
So,
happen.
but you see where our,
Yep, yep.
I mean, it's
pick a
kind
lot
of
of
was a
words,
waste
but-
of our time. It was a waste of the folks' time who came here to testify because they took the time because it was important enough for them, not important enough for the pipeline.
But
Another way to look at this also is if we do have one more month worth of looking at in testimony, I mean, then we'll get more education on the legal piece, hear from the other side. I don't see my mind changing at all, but if it makes the process more complete, more solid, more steadfast, whatever you want to use, I'll spend another month just gathering more information. But yeah, I don't see my vote changing at all, but if it takes one more meeting to do it, I'd be willing to do that.
I'm definitely open-minded about the process. Definitely open-minded about all of this. Where I caution, because we seem to be teetering on legalities of I think there's an underlying premise that no matter what we do, there's gonna be some legal recourse done that's gonna cost the county money, whatever. But what I caution, I think, Toby, is deviating from our process. So whether we're sending letters directly to opponents of Mr. Ventura's recommended ordinance change, like, I wouldn't do that because we're not, we have this 500-foot bubble where she didn't get a letter in the mail today, right?
Yeah.
So, I think we follow our process, and because I don't want there to be any recourse for the county because maybe some letter didn't get to somebody in some office at some point. I think I would just caution that we follow our process as we do.
Okay.
I wouldn't send any special letters to anybody. They can, public can come as they will. Because I think it then shows that we are deviating from already set processes. That would be my only caution in all of this.
Toby, I have a specific question from last month. What is the proper way for our board to receive legal instruction? Because we got into the discussion, we had a motion on the floor, and then it was like we could not get the legal discussion because we had a motion on the floor and we were asking about breaking into executive session, which this board apparently hasn't done in the past, but that would have been the appropriate time with it. I mean, was there something with the motion being on the floor that obstructed us from at that time getting the legal advice?
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to that because I'm not your counsel, so I don't want to get into that of it. But what I would tell you is that,
Well, if legal has something to say,
Well,
when can they
when
tell
would
us
they
and how
say
can
it?
we hear it?
Yeah.
Because I'm.
Well, so first of all, I would say that, and this was a goal of mine down the road, is that we really should do a presentation on this stuff is, the public's business should always be done in the open, right? There's state law that requires you to conduct the business in the open. There is a provision that allows exemptions to open public meetings with certain criteria for you to go in there. As I stated last month, this board has never exercised that option. Not to say you couldn't, not to say that legal counsel couldn't, request that you do that. But there is a specific requirements to do that. And then the second part about executive session is that it's by law, you go into executive session to be briefed on something. And then by law, you're not supposed to talk about it afterwards, right? So it's a complicated issue, so you only go in for certain types of issues and occurrences and things like that. And in fact, it's punishable. I mean, if you do talk about something outside of executive session, it's against the law. So
And I wasn't suggesting that we'd keep it
Yeah.
a secret, but I would,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it appears it got remanded back to us because we didn't get legal counsel, and yet last month we were all here and legal counsel was here and we didn't get the information, so there, we gotta figure out
Yeah.
for this next round,
Yeah.
how do we get the information?
So, yeah, I mean, you know, to piggyback on what Commissioner Johnson's saying, when would that have been a good time in last month's public hearing?
I think you asked the questions, I mean. yeah,
Okay, but-
yeah.
So that's where I am a little bit confused. So, legal counsel apparently has something they want to share with us, and the commissioners want them to share with us, but they want us to ask them. Is that right?
Well, I think we'll get to that moving forward.
Now?
Yeah. Well, not now, tonight, but.
Well, no, but
Yeah, tonight is really, do we want to schedule additional public hearing? And then at
So-
that time, I guess, then, and I envision, you know, I envision a lot of that will probably be in the open. That a lot of those comments and a lot of that review will be in the open.
So let me ask you this, do we have to schedule another public hearing? And, can we just send it back to the commissioners as is?
I think you have to have an additional public hearing to accomplish the instructions they gave you, yes,
You think so?
yeah. If they requested that you obtain additional public comment, the only way that you can legally do that,
Actually,
yeah.
actually, I have exactly what Commissioner Aaron said. They need to talk to legal counsel, and if they do not want to, they need to schedule another public hearing with the proponents of the issue. So we either talk to legal or we schedule another hearing. That's why I wanted legal here tonight.
But I don't
And they're not.
understand, I mean, just because he requested that, I don't know that, that means that that's what we have to do, does it? I'm just asking, I don't know.
I don't know, that's why I'm saying that's what
Well,
his
that's a
motion
good, that's a
was.
good point, Commissioner Scott, because we sent that to them and they never voted on it.
It was never even on their agenda. It was never even an agenda item that they,
And we still don't know how their lobbyists found out about it. Nobody
Well-
seems to
Well,
know
and
how.
that's, but I mean, that's here nor there, but I mean, I guess,
I mean, it's.
It's really not, because if they're speaking about an executive session, it's
back-
really not neither here nor there, that's illegal.
but I
So-
guess I'm just,
Well, I mean,
I feel maybe like they didn't,
But back to what Commissioner Green was saying, you know, I don't, and again, I barely passed government in high school, but, so I don't know all the rules, but to me, it seems like we sent it to the county commission, and they haven't put it on their agenda and went through the process yet, and I feel like that's the process they have to go through before they would send it back to us. And they'd send it back to us with some changes or some recommendations that they'd like us to look farther into on the ordinance change.
not just do over.
Not just,
I'm sorry.
here, I want you guys to listen to more people talk about the exact same thing. I mean, to me, that doesn't seem,
Yeah, I mean, is there an issue with the zoning? Is there an issue with one of the, I mean, what is the issue? What do we need to change?
I mean,
What do
I
they
guess
think is the
I
problem with it?
think if we're gonna have, yeah.
I mean, anybody else with an application, wouldn't you work with them and say, hey, we need to deal with this?
So
Here's
what-
the problem here.
Yeah. one of the-
Why isn't somebody reaching out to Tony and saying, hey,
So, Toby, one other question, and I might have lost my train of thought
Sorry.
here on it. No, it's fine.
High school government still.
Yeah. But when you graduate from Canton, you just pass, they just pass, yeah. Let's just say that this whole discussion at the county commission, this executive session, all this business hadn't happened. When was it scheduled to be on their agenda?
it was not scheduled.
It was never gonna be scheduled?
No, it was never set as a public hearing date, that was part.
Well, I understand that date, but then when was it gonna be?
I don't know, it wasn't set, they set it.
Hmm?
They set that date It was not set.
So how does that process work? Okay, so we pass the recommendation, and then do you push it up to them and say that, okay, now here, this is in your bucket of stuff to deal with? And then they can basically take it out of the bucket and deal with it when they want to?
Yep, so we.
Is there a period? I mean, that can't go on for a year, can it? Or, I mean, there has to be a period where, a time frame where it has to be heard?
So the law requires that the only timeline is the planning commission. So when we receive an application, you're supposed to do it unless, something happens with publication or something like that within 45 days. But that same requirement doesn't carry over to the Board of Commissioners. So then what staff typically does is we put it on the consent agenda to set the first and second reading public hearing for that. In this case, that didn't occur, so.
And it didn't occur, why? Because they didn't accept it on their agenda?
No, it was just never placed on that agenda, so it was handled by legal, so. But beyond that, so I know there's a lot of discussion you want to have about that and concerns and things like that, and of course there is, but what we need to do is, what's the direction that we want to move forward with? And again, I left it on here to I'll take direction with what you want to do. My recommendation would be, is based on the remand, is that you would set the public hearing for your next planning commission meeting. At that time, I believe staff and legal counsel will draft up a staff report that will address these things, that the public can see, that everyone can see, and some of those things, so. But beyond that, if you want to just, there's nothing on the agenda to take action on tonight beyond that. So that's probably the best alternative that we can do tonight.
I'm assuming you've already had some of that additional discussion with legal?
Yes, yes.
Is there anything in this forum that you're able to share regarding what some of the concerns were? If it was the 2,500 foot setbacks being reasonable, or what some of that general concern was?
No, I mean, I think a lot of it is that the original analysis that staff gave you is that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which again, under the current comprehensive plan, everything is pretty much consistent, And so, I mean, beyond that, I think, staff's position is that this more than likely would be superseded by state law. But then beyond that, we didn't get into that part of it, and then we didn't get into the part about, what does this ordinance actually say? What is the content of the ordinance? And I think that's really what's going to be part of that next public hearing.
Can we get information from legal counsel without having a public hearing? I just don't know what we gain.
Well, I think you're going to get a review of the ordinance.
But I think any legal advice, unless it's executive session, has to be public.
I think we're going to give you a staff report with all the analysis in there.
Well, did our state's attorney's office by chance talk with the law office in Aberdeen that all the state's attorneys go to?
I can't speak to that. Yeah.
Because it, clearly, on June 1st of 2022, they talked about how the counties have the authority to regulate interstate hazardous liquid pipelines, so.
I don't think anybody's disputing that. I think the commission's just kicking it back to us.
Well, he had stated that maybe state laws may supersede, which, not in our state. Maybe Iowa, North Dakota, Minnesota, Nebraska.
So Toby, what happens if we just don't do anything right now? Does it stay as is in the commissioner's bucket of stuff to take care of someday?
No, it's been remanded back to you. It sits here now.
So this is the first, like you said, this is the first remand that I think a lot of us have had to deal with.
they'll
They
just keep kicking it
didn't
back.
vote. What constitutes a remand? Help me out here.
Oh, many, like when we did the wind energy conversion systems, a lot of it was they wanted further review and analysis by the planning commission. So we changed the setbacks and we would change some of those things. So.
And by the planning commission, by you, right? Like that's.
No, I think the planning commission, yeah, yeah.
So.
But I mean, the planning commission, I think, plays a heavy role in that. I mean, because they can, so, and I'll go a step further and say, where secondary issue to this is, when it goes to the Board of Commissioners on a recommendation, they're by state statute can accept, reject, or amend the decision of the planning commission, okay? When it comes to amend, they have to have an additional public hearing. And then if they change something in, they have to have an additional public hearing. So when it came to the wind energy conversion systems, we were changing something all the time. I mean, it would have required additional public hearings as opposed to remanding it back. We could change it at one meeting and move it forward. We take the public comment on it. We understand those things, you know? It's kind of how policy is, you know, when you go to Pier, you go to DC, they take, you know, public comment, they take public hearings and those kind of things. Sometimes it's easier and less emotional if it's at this level than it is at the higher level too,
So
so.
the hope would be that we would come up with a draft or approve whatever it is, and then it would just be adopted by the commission with no changes, so there wouldn't have to be additional comments.
Yeah, I can't promise that ever
Right,
happens, but,
right.
but I mean, but, you know, but the goal would be is that we would send up something that is acceptable.
So based on your analysis and the comprehensive plan that we're still working under, you know, do you anticipate, based on your further analysis, that whatever comes out of it is still probably in line with the comprehensive plan as it exists?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always gonna be in line.
Like
I
this-
mean,
the
the
staff
current-
recommendation would likely be still.
Well, I think now that's been remanded back, I think staff wants to discuss the policy with you, you know? I think we want to make sure that everyone understands what the actual ordinance actually does. Conceptually, I know that meeting we all talked about, now the public is fully in support of regulations, but I think you need to look at a little bit closer some of those things and some of the aspects of what the actual ordinance is. And we can accomplish that, we'll do that, so.
And next public hearing, if that's the way we decide to go, we'll have the additional information. You know, I'm assuming the opposition will showing up. They're quite aware of what's going on right now. And, you know, and legal will be here too. We'll get all that information.
Yep, yep.
Technically, we don't even know that they're opposition. Like that's.
Good point. Well, both sides.
The opponents, proponents, I believe is what they say.
So do we have to make a motion on this, or do we just give
Just direction.
staff guidance?
Yeah,
right?
just direction, I guess. I mean, it's, you know, I understand all sides of this. I understand everyone's feelings on this, and I understand the public's feelings on this. It's just the next step forward, you know, is what we need to look at. And, you know, the next one would be is to set the public hearing for your next meeting.
And we're assured that legal will be here and we can discuss all this and get this all out in the
Yep.
open and we'll,
Yeah, yep. I think they'll be here in attendance, but I think your staff analysis and your staff report will answer a lot of the questions too, so.
okay.
Yep.
And I prefer to do it in open forum
Yep.
versus
Yes.
executive session,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like it's,
Yeah,
you know.
I absolutely wanted an open forum. I think the public obviously have a lot to gain or lose with this, and so they need to hear everything.
Well, and I'll say, when you go back to the wind energy conversion system ordinance, we literally changed like 2 sentences. Took us almost a year, right? This is a 20-page ordinance. I'll stress it again, this is a 20-page ordinance. I mean, we gotta make sure that everything in there is appropriate to what it is that everyone understands. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that we need to go through the due diligence to make sure that you've looked at all those sections. And so legal and our staff is gonna make sure that the next staff analysis does that, so.
Is 1 month enough time?
Yeah, we have to get it done, yeah.
We can't, I mean, we can't keep kicking it down the road.
Well, statutorily, I think
That's
it's
the
the 45
problem. I mean,
days,
it's a
right?
timely matter that needs to be done.
So I think, is that the direction? We
Well,
put it on for a hearing?
nobody can really, I mean, it appears that's the only thing we can do.
Right.
Right? I mean.
That's how I feel.
Apparently.
Yeah, I agree.
We can't, I'm still of the stance, I'd like to see the county commission deal with it and go through their process. But what I'm hearing is that can't happen now. Is that right? Or,
Right, yeah. If they remand it back to us, then
Yeah.
we have to go through public comment and everything to make any motion to send it back to them even.
Yep, okay, so I guess that's, if that's the only thing we can do, I guess that's what I'm reluctantly in favor of.
Well, you can do what you want to do. I mean, I'm just.
Well, I
you know,
can't, I can't
we're
send
having
it
a
back to the
discussion.
county commission.
Well, they already sent it back to you. That's the point.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So I can't do what I want to do, but.
It's interesting that they're able to do it without a vote, though.
Without a vote, without a,
Like, that's the only thing that's really
it's just,
frustrating.
I
as a-
remand it.
As a planning and zoning commission member.
Well, and the thing well, I'll keep my comments to myself, but it,
I don't.
yeah.
So next meeting?
Well, we all have the same
So I guess
goal
the
is
thing,
to create a good policy.
So,
right?
yeah, exactly. But the thing, so now I think with the thing we have to decide is, do we want to have it at our next meeting, or do we want to have a special meeting the week before? How long is your staff analysis gonna take with legal and going through all this stuff? I mean, I would assume it's gonna be longer than normal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like quite a bit longer.
Well, and I mean, the other issue is
And the
just-
only reason I'm asking, Toby, is maybe it would be better to have it on its own night, just because if it's gonna take a lot of time.
No, I think we can handle with that meeting. It's,
You can?
yeah, I don't think there's that many agenda items that night, but as Commissioner Green said, which, you know, is a good policy to always have, let's follow the process.
Yeah.
That we usually follow, right? So
So keep it at the normal meeting and the normal time, and,
it makes it easier to make sure you're all here too. So I don't have to track you down two weeks in a row, so. but
That's April 17th and it's tax day, just so get them, don't wait till that day. Make sure you're done.
Yeah, so totally understand. I understand everyone's feelings on the issue and all those things too, but it's where we are with it. And so we just, we move forward with it. And the goal in mind is to, if there is a policy that's adopted, is to make sure it's the right policy, you know, so. Okay,
Okay,
that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby.
thank you.
thanks, Toby. And sorry you gotta take the brunt of some of
Yeah,
our
sorry.
frustrations. Cause I know it wasn't your
It's
deal.
not. Okay, I guess we are done. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.